Hello, fifth graders. I today need you to get your Unit 2 packet, and I know we finished all the notes, but we're going to use the notes that we took over the last 2 lessons to help us with a little what I call shortcut method based on the number lines that we've seen. So you need your Unit 2 math packet. You also need your dry erase materials, or if you don't have the dry erase materials, you can use scrap paper, or you can write these problems in your math spiral. All of those are fine, but I want us to continue practicing with rounding today. Get it rock solid in our minds. And we started rounding in our lesson 10, and I had us review how to round whole numbers to the nearest 10, 100,000. And then we learned how to round decimals to the nearest whole number, 10th and 100th. We used number lines, and using those number lines is a great way to connect what we're doing, to connect these rules with a visual model so that you remember it. You're not just memorizing it. And we obviously are able to put decimal values on number lines. So great skills to have. I want to show you kind of a quicker way once you have this visual model down. So here we go. Here's our little shortcut. And maybe somebody at home already told you about this one, or maybe you learned it before. But in lesson 10, so I want you to be looking at your paper. This is what we had written down together before. When we rounded these to the nearest 10, we figured out the place value, right? Like this is the tens place, and we said that 72 must be between 70 and 80, and we're trying to figure out which one it was closer to by using this halfway point. And this halfway point always involved the number 5, right? Somehow the number 5 was at the end for that. So what you can actually do, sorry, my dishwasher's running right now. I don't know if you can hear it, but I'm sorry if it's bothersome. Hopefully it'll quit soon. Over here, you can underline the place value. And basically with this, if I want to round to the nearest 10, I know it has to be either 70 or 80, right? So if you look at the number to the right of the place you want to round to, if the number to the right of the place you want to round to is 4 or less, that means it's going to fall in this set, so it would stay the same. So instead of drawing this out, you could say, okay, well, the number next to the place I want to round to is 4 or less. That would make it closer to the 70, so it's 70. Now, for letter B, the place I want to round to, the tens place, has a 0 in it. So that means this is between 0 and 10. So when I look next to it, I see that this number is 5 or higher. If it's 5 or higher, that meant that it was going to bump up to the next 10, right? So in just looking at this, I can see that's 5 or higher, so I'm going to bump this 0 up to the next 10. For letter C, the place we wanted to round to was a tens place, and I look, and the place next to the tens place is a 4. If it's 4 or less, that means this is going to stay the same at 150. So basically, if you look at the place you want to round to start, underline that digit. If the number to the right of the place you want to round to is 4 or less, then this digit stays the same. If the number to the right of the place you want to round to is 5 or more, that would make it on this second part of the number line. That means this would bump up to 5. And in this case, it does. If I want to round to the nearest 100, then I look at the number next to the 4. It's 5 or higher. That means this is going to be 500. For letter E, the place we wanted to round to had a 0 in it. The number next to the 0 is a 5. That means this is going to bump up to the next 100. I know 51 is between 0 and 100, so that would be 100. And this one, the number next to the place I want to round to is 4. So that means this 8 is going to stay the same. So that would be 1800. And the same works for the thousands. If I'm rounding to the nearest 1,000 here, I look at the number next to the digit in the thousands place, it's 3. That means that this 6 stays the same. It would fall in this section of the number line. For letter H, if there's a 0 here, the number next to the 0 is a 2, which is 4 or less, which means it's going to stay that 0. And for letter I, the number next to the 7 in the thousands place is a 5. That means this 7 is going to bump up to the 8. So you can still be drawing those number lines to help you through this, but this is a shortcut that if you're ready for, can just save you some time. This same process works when you're rounding decimal values. The same process. So take a look at our notes we did yesterday, lesson 11, rounding decimals. When you had to round to the nearest whole number, we know that that means the ones place, right? So I underline the digit in the ones place, and it's either gonna stay a 4 or go up to a 5. And how to determine that? Look at the digit to the right of the ones place. This is a 7, which means it's halfway or higher. So that would bump up to a 5. I don't write any digits after that because I'm rounding to the nearest whole number. For this next one, this 6 is in the ones place. When I look at the 6, the number next to it is a 2. And remember, if it's 4 or less, that's gonna stay the same. So I would leave this as 36. For letter C, the number next to the ones place is a 4. That means this would stay the same. So I write the 252. We're always keeping those digits in front of the place we went around to. When we wanted to round to the nearest tens place, this 7 was in the tens place. The number next to the 7 is 4 or less, so that 7 stays the same. And I don't write anything past the tenths place. I want to round to the nearest tenth. For letter E, when I look at the number next to the tenths place, it's a 6. That means this 2 bumps up to a 3, so 19.3. And for letter F, the number next to the tenths place is a 3. So that means that 9 is going to stay the same. It works for hundredths as well. The number next to the 2 was 5 or higher, so we changed that to a 3. The number next to the 6 is a 4, so we left that as a 6 because we're rounding to the hundredths. And with this last one, the number next to the 7 is a 2, so we left that as a 7. So let's try a couple of these on your whiteboards using this strategy. And if the number lines make more sense to you, I'm totally fine with you using the number lines. If this method that we're doing today makes more sense to you, I'm totally fine with you doing that. I just want you to use something that works for you. And if you forget this little rule of when do I leave it the same or do I round it down or what do I do, draw a number line and it will help you. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna practice rounding to the nearest whole number. We're gonna look at decimal values because that's our focus in the chapter, right? So what I'd like you to do is, I would like for you on your whiteboard to round 175.7, so 175 and 7/10 to the nearest whole number. Press pause while you do that, and then press play when you're ready. Okay, so when I say round to the nearest whole number, this 5 is the place I'm looking at, okay? The nearest whole number means the ones place. So I know my answer is gonna stop there. I just need to look at the number next to that. The number next to the ones place is 5 or more. So that means instead of staying 175, I would bump that up to 176. So you should have 176. This pen is a little too much here. It's bleeding through. All right, your next one, 652 and 42 hundredths. Go ahead, pause, round to the nearest whole number. Okay, so this 2 is the place that I want to round to. So that means my answer is going to stop there. I look at the number to the right of the 2 and it's a 4. That means that this would stay the same. This wouldn't bump up because it's before the halfway mark. So 652 is what you should have. And the third one, rounding to the nearest whole number. Go ahead and figure it out and then press play. This 4 is in the ones place. So I have to figure out, is my answer 824? Or 825. When I look at the number next to the 4, this is past the halfway mark, so this would go up to 825. So this 4 either stays the same or goes up to the next one because 824 and 653 thousandths is between 824 and 825. We never make that 4 a 3 because 824 is not going to be between 823 and 824 on a number line. It's going to be past the 824. All right, let's try rounding to the nearest tenths place now. Here's your first one. Okay, welcome back. This 9 is in the tenths place. So I'm trying to figure out if this should be 64.9 or 1/10 up from that would be 65.0. So when I look at the number next to the 9, to the right of the 9, I see that it's 3. That means I'm not going to bump up to the next one. I'm going to stay the same. So my answer should be 64.9. It's going to stay the same because on my number line, it would say 64.95 is the halfway point, and 64.93 is less than halfway, so we leave it. Right, here's your next one, rounding to the nearest 10th. I see a 0 in the 10ths place. So I have to decide, is my answer going to stay 928 and 0 tenths, or is it going to round to 928 and 1/10? When I look at the number next to the place I want to round to, it's 5. That means that this is going to fall like exactly in the halfway mark, and we remember we said we finished that race. So this 0, I'm going to change to a 1. This is closer to 928.1. You shouldn't write any other digits after that. No more, because when you round to the 10ths place, you stop at the tenths. All right, and the third one like this, I have 87.961, so 87 and 961 thousandths. This 9 is the 10ths place. So I'm trying to decide, is 87 and 961 thousandths closer to 87.9 or 1/10 up from that, which would be 88.0. When I look at the number next to the 9, it's 5 or more. So that means this is going to go up by 1/10. It's closest to the next 10th. And if you add 1/10 to 9/10, we get 1 whole. So you should have 88.0. Include this 0.0 because I asked you to round to the nearest 10th, and you should have a digit in the 10ths place. And the last practice set here, I ask you to round to the nearest 100th. So same process. Try this on your whiteboard. This 8 is in the 100ths place. So my answer to this is either going to be 429.08, it's going to stay, or it's going to be 429.09. To figure out if it's 8 or 9, I look at the digit next to the one in the 100ths place. It's 4 or less. That means this is going to stay 429.08. Right, your next one, round to the nearest 100th. This 7 is in the 100ths place. So I'm trying to figure out, is this 1,200.97 or is this 1,200.98? Well, the number next to the 100ths place is 5 or higher. That means that it's going to fall in that halfway mark. So we'd bump that 7 up to an 8. 1,200.98. All those other digits stay the same. It's only this 100ths place we're concerned with. All right, last one of these. I have 0.998. So 998 thousandths. Rounded to the nearest hundredths. This 9 is in the 100ths place. So I'm trying to decide, is this 998 thousandths closer to 99 hundredths, or if I add a 100th to 99, so picture this, if I have 99 cents and I add a penny, don't I have $1 now? Okay, so when I look at the number next to this 9, it's 5 or higher, which means this gets bumped up by 1/100th, which means I should have 1.00. Put both those zeros because we're rounding to the nearest hundredths place. All right, I want you to try just a few more, and I'm going to kind of have them mixed up here. And you're going to be doing these on your whiteboards. I might need to zoom in a bit, we'll see. And you're going to do whichever thing, whatever it says here. So I'm going to scooch this down. Okay. On your whiteboard, or in your spiral, or on your scrap paper, this says round to the nearest hundredth, and this is the problem that they give you. So round 988 and 648 thousandths to the nearest hundredth. Go ahead and do that and press play when you're ready. Okay, so first off, this 4 is in the hundredths place. So I'm trying to figure out, is this 4 going to stay 4? Okay, is this closer to 988 and 64 hundredths or 988 and 65 hundredths? Well, because the number next to the place I want to round to is 5 or higher, that means I should have 988.65. That digit would go up to the 5. It's closer to that. All right, let's try another one. Again, we're going to round to the nearest hundredth. So here, go ahead and press play when you're ready. This 7 is in the hundredths place, so that's what I'm trying to figure out. Does this stay a 7? Is it closer to 57 hundredths or is it closer to 58 hundredths? Well, the number next to the hundredths place is a 1. And if it's 4 or less, we know that this stays the same. So 13.57 is what you should have. Right, next one, you're going to round to the nearest whole number. So I have 44.1 here. If I want to round to the nearest whole number, that means 1's place. So this is either going to be 44 or 45. And when I look at the number next to the ones place, it's less than 5, right? If it's 4 or less, then this stays the same. So 44.1 would be closer to 44 than 45. That makes sense, for sure. For number 4, I ask you to round this to the nearest 10th. And again, you're pressing pause and play between all of these. The 8 is in the 10ths place. So that means my answer should stop at the 10ths place. This is either going to be 5.8 or 5.9. And when I look at the number to the right of the 10ths place, it's a 0. That means this is going to stay 5.8. Just a couple more. All right, number 5, I ask you to round this to the nearest hundredth. So the hundredths place is this 5 right here. When I look at the number to the right of the hundredths place, it's an 8. So if this number to the right is an 8, that means I'm going to change this to 22.96. I go up by 1/100th because I'm rounding to the nearest hundredth. And this would be closer to 22.96 than it is to 22.95. I ask you again to round to the nearest 10th. So the nearest 10th means this 9. So this answer, is either going to be 3.9, or if I add a 10th to 3.9, that would be 4.0. So the number next to the 10th place is 4 or less. So that means this is going to stay at 3.9. I think 2 more. Number 7, I ask you to round to the nearest whole number. That's the ones place. So if I'm rounding this to the ones place, this is either going to be 10 or 11. I have to figure out if 10.204 is closer to 10 or 11. When I look at the digit to the right of the ones place, it is 4 or less. That means this is going to stay 10. And one more, I ask you to round to the nearest 10th. All right, this 6 is in the 10ths place. The number next to the 6 is 5 or more. So that means that 62 and 68 hundredths will be closer to 62.7. Again, if this strategy isn't making sense to you, you can create those number lines and have that visual model. And if it is making sense to you, then I'm okay with you using this as well. You do not have any other homework assignments or anything today. I just wanted you to practice this strategy, banking off of what we've already done. So you are now done with math for today. That would give you some time to work on that packet. Have a great day.